What's good, gamers? Aquilon here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start this video with an apology. An apology to Taliesin and all of his viewers that I may or may not have offended. And no, this isn't a facetious one. This is an actual apology. About 2 days ago, during a live stream, I got very heated over a reaction to something that Taliesin said. It had to do with show and tell, and throughout that, it became very clear that Taliesin, first and foremost, did not understand what show and tell actually means, or show don't tell actually means, and he made a number of wild claims. Now, I stand by all of my criticism towards Taliesin's arguments. What I do not stand by is how I conducted myself. Some of you, not many, a lot of you enjoyed the video, and I appreciate that. But some of you did point out that the personal attacks, the vitriol, the emotion was completely uncalled for. And you know what? You're right. I sometimes get charged. I have that South African flair, I guess you could say. So I do get charged, and I can be very combative, but it's not fair. I should not have done that, and so to Taliesin and anyone that felt offended by that, that felt that I should not have done that, I tried to hold myself to a higher standard. Back in the day, I would sometimes mouth off at the WoW developers in epic fashion to things that I nowadays feel very ashamed of. I should not have acted that way. It's childish and it's unbecoming. So I do apologize. I will try to do better. I can't promise that I will not do it again. I am... I can get emotional, but I will try. So I want to start with that. But now I do want to move into something far more important, and that is the actual topic of show, don't tell. It's become very clear that a lot of people in World of Warcraft, or at least in media today, do not understand what it means when people say show, don't tell. Show, don't tell is not a concept of medium, right? It's not, if you're writing a book, for example, you're only telling. And if you do a movie, you're only showing. You can tell in a movie. You can show in a book. The concept of show, don't tell lives in the mind of the audience, and how the audience perceives the words on the page or the words just spoken in play or in movie. It's not the medium that's important. It's what does it do to the mind? Now, to best describe or explain the difference between these two, I've got an example for you. Imagine two scenarios. We have two characters that's speaking to each other. So it is dialogue in both of them, and it is written. So you're reading two characters standing there having a conversation. In the first scenario, one character says to the other, "The moon is shining." That's it. In the second scenario, the character says to the other character, "Have you seen the silver glow of the moon tonight?" Now, in both of these scenarios, the same thing is basically said, right? The moon is shining. In scenario one, the audience knows, at least to some extent, the time of day. So they know that it has to be nighttime because the moon is shining. But they have no other information. They only know that the moon is shining and that it must be night. In the second scenario, the audience have a lot more information to go on. The audience knows that it's nighttime. It knows that the moon is shining, but it also knows that the moon has to be quite bright because apparently the moon is glowing everything almost silver. So it has to be full moon, most likely, and it also definitely has to be very bright. You see, you've just colored a picture for the audience in such a way that the audience can now take that forward and they can imagine the entire world around them. Now, I hope that that example explains to you quite clearly what it means when we say show, don't tell. Now, if we were to compare this or take this example to the most recent cinematics that we've had in World of Warcraft. I would say really over the last 4 years, these things that tell don't show became very prevalent in Shadowlands, and it basically just continued into Dragonflight. What happens here is what we refer to specifically in the most recent cinematic, and we'll stick to that one because it's the one that most of us remember, is what we refer to in storytelling as an exposition dump. Now, exposition dumping is when you don't want to show, you want to tell. But the problem is that what you want to tell is more complex than just the moon is shining. So now what happens is the characters are just dumping a bunch of story in their lines. And in this cinematic specifically, each one of the dragon aspects is basically dumping sometimes a related fact, but sometimes a completely unrelated fact. And it ends up making the dialogue feel very inorganic. You know, Marithra comes out of nowhere and just speaks about Amir Drisel, you know, and you can see how Amir Drisel is connected to the topic that they're discussing here, but it's not natural in how it would happen in an ordinary conversation. And that is because the writers are trying to relay an incredible amount of information to you, but they don't want to show you that information. They want to tell it to you. And that's it, right? So it just ends up being this exposition dump. The exposition dumping was very prevalent in sort of early Greek theater. So very, very early Greek theater would have these giant monologues where you would just get insane amounts of exposition dump. Now, I'm not saying that exposition dump can't work. There are absolutely times where you are kind of forced to dump a bit of exposition just as there's a scene that, you know, it is happening currently and it is sort of important to the story, but it's not fundamental to the story. And so making an entire 30-second clip just to show that is sort of unnecessary. So you'll just choose a character and do that exposition dumping, but it has to usually be done very carefully. If you do it too much, you ruin the experience and it feels unnatural and the audience just completely checks out. Do it too little, and it also, again, can sometimes feel a little bit inorganic. The fact of the matter is that show don't tell is as old as humanity itself. Storytelling is the oldest form of history or history keeping that humanity has. And even in normal stories, imagine, for example, I was sitting here trying to tell you guys about The Expanse, the TV show, and why you should watch it. You could imagine that I would say, oh, wow, The Expanse is really, really good. And then I would proceed. I'm not going to do that now because that spoilers. I don't want to sit and think here, what can I share that won't spoil it for anyone? But then I would try to pick specific scenes out of the series that doesn't spoil it for you, but does paint a picture as to why I think you would enjoy this. What I wouldn't do is just go, oh, The Expanse, really good. 8 out of 10 should watch.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please?
That is not going to be a convincing argument for the vast majority of people. We communicate all the time by showing, not really just by telling. We do tell sometimes, but most of the time, telling usually very unnecessary information, things that isn't important, we will tell, but anything that has any sort of real weight, we will show. And that's really the problem with modern day WoW. So I want to treat you, and this is going to be sort of the final, you know, after this, you can go do whatever the hell you want. But I want to treat you to something that we did 3 nights ago on live stream. I spent about 5 minutes just quickly because I was trying to explain to someone that also didn't agree with me. I wanted to explain to them what the cinematic should have looked like. So I spent 5 minutes and I just sort of roughly cut up the whole cinematic and squished things together. And it came to 22 seconds. So for the next 22 seconds, I want you to watch what it looks like when you show instead of tell. Like the information that you can get across by showing rather than telling. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you. Remember to hit the like button if you like. Subscribe over on Patreon if you want to keep this channel free from sponsorships that want to sell you stuff that you do not need and that I can't be asked to write a script for. So I'll appreciate the $1 eternally. Enjoy the 22-second cinematic, and let me know in the comment section what you thought of it. Did it actually convey the information in your mind prudently? Do you think that it is good, or do you think this is shit? Let me know. Ladies and gentlemen, peace.